Hey folks, so for today's video I wanted to do a little get ready with me, and I mentioned a little while back, and I've made a video about this before, but I wanted to kind of just like chat with y'all and give you a little bit of backstory about my autoimmune disorder, because I did say in like my unpopular opinions video that I wish that autoimmune disorders and autoimmune things were more talked about and more like widely known. Also, I have my dog here, my parents' dog, Remy. If you hear or say any movement, that is her. She's just taken a nap. We get her for the entire month, so you'll probably see her in a couple of videos. Let me start on my makeup. If you're not like an OG or a longtime viewer of mine, you probably wouldn't know much about my autoimmune disorder. Oh, there she goes. There she goes. I don't talk about it a lot, not because I'm like ashamed of it or like I'm super private about it, but mostly because it doesn't really come up in a lot of things. But I have what is called dermatomyositis. It's very rare, and basically the definition, the loose definition, is the inflammation of the muscles and skin cells. So basically, my immune system at some point in my life was treating my muscles and my skin cells like they were infected for no reason. So I wanted to tell the story of how I found out about my weird, rare disease. Back when I was diagnosed in 2006, it was very rare and there weren't a lot of studies about it. Like when I went to the hospital, I was thinking that I was maybe going to be like in a medical journal, because I was like, wait, is this the first of a kind? Like, do I have a disease that doesn't exist yet? Like, that's where my mind was. But my concealer, here it is, and my brow things, because that's what's going to take me the longest. Remy, could you really walk around anymore? Do you want to come sit with me or no? You're kind of a pain sometimes. I was born with eczema, and my mom spent a long time when I was a kid trying to figure out like what laundry detergents to use and like what things we could use to make my life easier, because I would get it really bad on my like feet and my hands and my arms, and I had it when I was little, and then it kind of like, I wouldn't say went into remission, but like wasn't nearly as bad by the time I got to like elementary school. And then middle school hit, and so did puberty. Can you please sit? When I hit middle school, my eczema decided to morph into something worse, and I started going to a dermatologist, and it would get to the point where like I get really, really flaky. I made a joke when I was younger that like I had old lady hands by the time I was 12, and my dermatologist diagnosed me with psoriasis. And so then I went on some medications. I don't even remember what the actual topical steroid was, but I went on several meds, most of it topical things. Junior year, I really started to notice that my skin was really, really bad. Like I looked sunburned all the time. I was super flaky and red, and like my dermatologist recommended that we do something called light booth therapy. What that really is was basically just going into like a vertical, like upright tanning booth for like 9 minutes at a time. We started at like 2 minutes and then we got up to like 9. How do people draw eyebrow strokes? I plucked the shit out of my eyebrows earlier. We started doing light booth therapy as well as this topical steroid that I was taking. And at that point, I was having to wear gloves and socks to sleep, cotton gloves and socks with like aquifer underneath. So I went many years not wearing sandals like ever, because my feet always had to be covered. Oh my God. Many years I spent just like wearing closed-toed shoes. Like I did not wear sandals for years. I had to wear socks. I had to wear shoes because my feet were so flaky and dry, and like it got to the point where like my legs were getting really flaky and dry. And junior year was really where it reached a head where I was miserable all the time. I looked sunburned all the time. I was like losing a layer of skin on my legs like a day. It was just like, it was flaking off me. My mom was having to wash my clothes separately from everybody else's clothes because the aquifer would just ruin clothes in the laundry, and it ruined several of her outfits. So we had to wash my things by themselves, and then my mom had to wash the washing machine, like had to scrub the washing machine each time we washed my cotton gloves. And I went through so many socks. so many socks. At that point, it was still mostly my skin. But the latter half of junior year, I started to notice that I was very tired all the time and super cold. I wore long sleeves like all the time. I was also a very sweaty teen, so I was just like awkward all around. So I was very cold a lot, and I would get home from school, eat like an entire another meal that wasn't dinner, and then take like an hour and a half long nap like every day. But my mom could never really figure out what was going on, and we never really thought, at least I didn't think much of it at the time. I'm sure my mom was just like freaking the fuck out because she's like, why is my teenage daughter like so tired and cold all the time? Like, what the fuck? And at that point, I had also started losing weight. Let me get my eyeshadow primer here. I had a very like rocky adolescence when it came to my own body image because, like I had mentioned in my other video, puberty hit me like a ton of bricks, and I went from not needing a bra to needing an underwire very, very quickly. I was a C cup by the time I was in the second half of 6th grade. I was like a D cup by the 8th grade, and then by the time I was like 10th grade, I had reached like a double D cup. Like, I was busty. We would make jokes that I had like childbearing hips by the time I was 13. I got very curvy very early and very quickly. And so in high school in 2005, that's rough because all of the images of the bodies you were seeing in the media, everybody was so stick thin, which like now I'm glad that that's kind of turned around and that like you get a lot more like curvy bodies and a lot more like kind of acceptance of thickness, if you will. But back in 2004 and 2005, that was not the case. So I was an awkward teen. I'm using the Perception palette from Midas, by the way, if it wants to focus. There we go. Yes, pretty. I'm gonna use Existence, this kind of warmy brown in the crease. But the other side effect that came along with my skin issues was also I started losing weight for no reason because I wasn't trying to. I was sleeping more. I was way more sedentary than I had been. Like, I played golf in high school.
Yeah, I know.
I played golf, but I was like moving a lot less, so there was no reason for me to be losing weight other than something being wrong. We didn't quite realize how wrong it was until the summer before senior year when my family went camping. I could not pull myself up to the second bunk, to the top bunk at our cabin. And my mom was like, Abigail, you're not that weak. And I'm like, no, yes, I am that weak. Like, I can't do it. And she was like, what? So I started to lose a lot more weight a lot faster, and my skin got worse. I looked sunburned. Literally, I was so red all the time, and I kept losing weight, and it got to the point where my body was so weak that I could not physically pick my head up off my pillow in the morning. I had to roll out of bed. Like, that's how weak my body had gotten. Probably at my heaviest in high school, I wore like a size 16 jean. And I'm like 5'9", so if that gives you any context. A size 16 in jeans, and at my thinnest, at my sickest, if you will, I had gotten down to a size 8, which was not normal for me at all, because like I had said, I was curvy by the time I was 13. So I got to the point where I wasn't curvy. I got down to a C cup bra. Like, I had not been a C cup since I had like just gotten into puberty. So it was really scary because I'm like, oh, this is weird. But because I had so many body issues and because I was so self-conscious about myself, I was like, oh, well, this is great. I'm losing weight. This is awesome. And I'm just in my head, like, not thinking straight, not realizing that, oh, this isn't normal. And I know that my mom probably was like freaking out way more than she let on, to not freak me out. It was that summer when I couldn't climb up to the bunk that we were like, okay, well, let's go start seeing a doctor. So we went to my pediatrician. He did everything he could. That he was just a family doctor, so it's not like he was a specialist or knew all of these rare things. He sent me to an endocrinologist to check my cortisol, and then they tested me for lupus. They tested me for low cortisol, so I started I started getting cortisone shots, a number of other things that I don't exactly remember everything, but the main two were that they thought I might have had lupus or I was just low in cortisone. And so I had to get blood tests like every week, and it got to December 1st of 2006. And that was my senior year in high school. Senior year was already pretty hectic and crazy because, you know, I was on the newspaper, I was an editor on the newspaper, I was on the golf team, I was on the bowling team. Like, I was involved in a decent amount of things that I really, really cared about. Like, I didn't have like a ton of activities in high school, but the activity that I did, I like held so close to me and so dear to me that like to this day, I still feel like the time in the newspaper in high school are like the most formative years of my life. Truly. December 1st, we end up at Seattle Children's Hospital. And we went to go see some rheumatologists, some pediatric rheumatologists, and they did some blood tests, they did some like physical tests, they did some breathing tests with me, and I remember the rheumatologist, the specialist, they looked at me and my mom, and they're like, we want to admit you on Monday. And this was a Friday. So we came back the next Monday, and I remember I said to the doctors, I actually didn't powder them under my eyes. What am I doing? I said to the doctors, I was like, well, next week's pay stub. And most of you probably don't know what pay stub means, but it was the weekend, the like final week of like a news cycle for student newspapers and actual newspapers, where it was called pay stub because back in the day, they literally were like gluing things up to a board so that things could get printed the way they were supposed to. But because it was all digital, we still called it pay stub. So I was like, well, we have pay stub next weekend. I cannot miss school. How long is this going to take? Me not realizing that like, oh, I have a fucking rare disease that we need to figure out what it is. And the doctor, bless their hearts, thank God, they were like, well, we'll try. And I was like, okay, well, holding it to you. I did not get out in 3 days. But we admitted me the next Monday, and I got an IV. My veins were very fickle. Let's just put it this way. My veins were so fickle that like we had to have a very specific nurse come do my IV and do my blood draws when I had to come back for future appointments. And at one point when I was getting my blood drawn, when I was like still becoming healthier, they had to poke me 8 times to find a vein. Like, that's how fickle and annoying and bitchy my veins were. They're like,
oh no, we're gonna make you 8 times. Eight times sounds good.
At one point, my IV, like, my vein, like, blew, and so like in the middle of the night I'm waking up with like searing pain, and the nurse has to come in, and like my hand is all bruised up because like my vein blew because it was so sensitive. So we spent days getting tests done. I had like a constant drip of saline. I would get like Benadryl every so often too, which was always funny to get intravenously. Like getting Benadryl intravenously is wild because like when you take Benadryl it makes you sleepy, and so I was getting Benadryl through my veins, so like my arms and my body felt more tired quicker than my head. So like I could feel my arms just like getting tired. I'm like, oh, what? It was like the reverse transformation of when Asta goes into his dark mode. I was just like, whoa, I'm so tired. 3 days go by. My dad and my mom were alternating coming to stay with me because my sister was still in school. My sister was a freshman. And so like at one point my dad we watch like vintage bowling tournaments on like ESPN4. So like at one point I'm like, Dad, why are we watching this? Because there was nothing on TV. And we watched old bowling games. My grandparents came to see me. I had one of my mom's friends came to see me because we were in Seattle. And this was before I had my laptop. This was before like YouTube was much of a thing. This was before social media and like streaming stuff was even available widely. So like we were literally just watching TV at the hospital. My mom had a laptop. It was like a really shitty old HP laptop. I remember talking to my newspaper staff and my advisor. I was like, I want to help. And they're like, no, Abby, be in the hospital. Like, calm down. And I was like, but I have nothing to do. And they were like, we'll take care of it. And I'm like, fine. I did make them send me like articles to copy edit on like the Friday night, because we had like this long running thing that like every Friday, every time we did Paste Up, there was like an hour Friday night where we would all just like sit silently in a room and just like copy edit each other's articles and then just like pass them around. And so I was like, I'm bored. I'm not missing a copy editing weekend. Give me articles to copy edit. They sent me emails with the articles and I'm just like typing on my mom's laptop, just like copy editing this stuff and making notes. And at this point they had done, I think, several biopsies. I did like a skin biopsy, and then, actually, I have an idea. I don't want to go all the way downstairs to get my contour book. I can just use my Midas one. 2 collabs today. We got the Basic B collab and then the Neon MUA collab. Using the Noon palette. I like the contour in this one a little bit more than the Dawn palette. Such a good tone. Ugh, love it. So I got a skin biopsy, I got a lymph node biopsy. The only time they actually had to like give me anesthesia and like knock me out was when they did the lymph node, like, or thyroid? Yeah, lymph node out of like my hip area. I had never really had surgery before. And so when I woke up, there's still a spot on my hip that if I touch it in the right spot, I can't feel it because there's just like the tiniest amount of just like nerves that aren't there anymore. I get like phantom scratches down there sometimes. I started doing these like pulmonary function tests. They hadn't started me on prednisone yet. I don't think so. But I had like a hot med student that came to see me every day, and I was just like, I felt like I was in an episode of Grey's Anatomy because I was obsessed with Grey's Anatomy at the time, and I was like, oh my god, all the interns are coming to see me because it was a teaching hospital. So we had this really hot med student that came to see me, and I called him McDreamy, not to his face, but like we called him McDreamy. But literally like a resident would come with the interns and they would just come and take notes, and she would explain what was going on with me, and I literally felt like I was in an episode of Grey's Anatomy. It was kind of awesome for like a hot minute. I'm like, at least me being in the hospital with like a rare disease that we don't know what it is, it was like I got to live out my Grey's Anatomy fantasy. I don't know. I was a weird kid. I had to do an echo. I had to do an EKG. I had to do the one, I think it was an esophagus one where I had to like swallow some drink that had like a dye in it that they could pick up on the x-ray machine. But I couldn't eat anything for like 12 hours. I did like every test under the sun. I did so many tests in those 9 days. I spent 9 days at Children's Hospital. My doctors, they started throwing around this term dermatomyositis, and they started throwing around scleroderma, Hashimoto's. They came up with a plan for dermatomyositis. And like I said, dermatomyositis is the inflammation of the muscles in the skin, and that's what I had. Like my muscles were dying. Like my body was killing my muscles and my skin cells. So they put me on something called IVIG. It is like a blood plasma that is like a byproduct of when like you donate blood. It's really complicated, but it's like IV immunoglobulin thing. It's very expensive. Like we would have been bankrupted if my dad wasn't working for Boeing for 40 years. We did that. We put me on one of those one night. And at this point I had like 3 different IVs in my body because my veins just gave out 2 other times, which was very annoying. It was very annoying. They did a round of this IVIG thing, which was like a whole like liter of fluid that they like pumped into me. So I felt very sloshy for a while. And they also started me on a high dose of prednisone. And if you've ever taken prednisone, usually it's for a short amount of time, and it's not like 60 milligrams twice a day. Like they started me on 60 milligrams, and then they like weaned me off down to like 45 and 30. After a couple of years, I was completely off prednisone, but they started me on a lot. And like, if you've ever taken prednisone, usually it's for some sort of like lingering allergic response to things because your immune system is like going in overdrive and you need to chill your immune system out because it's a steroid. So I was on steroids for several years. And it also works like an upper. So I was very awake a lot. I was like, woo, just bouncing off the walls. I remember the morning after we did the IVIG and had started me on the prednisone, I woke up, and if there's ever been a time in my life where I've had an out-of-body experience, it was that. Because for so long before that, I was just flaky, red, itchy. My day-to-day life, it was like my quality of life day-to-day was just so low because of it. And often people don't really realize how much skin problems can really affect your quality of life, whether it's like cystic acne or eczema or my weird fucking disease. Skin shit really fucks with you because it's something that you feel, but it's also something that other people see. And so I looked at my arms and looked at my hands, and I was like, are these my hands? Because my skin had been so red for so long, and I was looking at my hands and they were like white. They were clear. I could see my veins. They were softer. They didn't itch. It was a miracle in my mind. There we go. I love this highlighter so much. I remember when the doctors came to see me and saw me, they were like just shocked. And they put me on prednisone. They put me on a thyroid medication because my thyroid was also like hypothyroid. They put me on something called Plaquenil, which Fun fact, it was one of the things that people were thinking might have been a COVID cure at one point. It's an anti-malarial medication. They put me on that, so like, not gonna get malaria. And then they also put me on, oh, fuck, what's it called? My brain is blanking. I don't remember what the other medication was, but it was a shot that I had to give myself once a week, which wasn't fun. Like, giving yourself a fucking shot in the stomach, not fun. And that was technically a medication that is given to cancer patients. So I was on one of those, and that was the one I was on probably the longest out of all of them. Very quickly, when I was on the prednisone, I did not follow the dietary recommendations in like reducing my sodium intake, because prednisone makes you retain water like fucking crazy. So if you've ever been on prednisone for any length of time, you know that you start to look like you're hoarding acorns and nuts for the winter because of how puffy you get. Moon face is something they call it. I had moon face for a while. So if you see photos, like I'll have photos up on the screen, but like photos of me from like graduation and then like a year later, it is quite a big difference. Looking at the picture of me at the beginning of senior year versus the end of senior year, I look like a different person. And I felt like a different person, to be honest. My own body image has always been just a constant struggle because of that. Because during my fucking formative years, my body decided to be like, you know what? It's already not super easy for you because you are an adult-sized teenager by the age of 15, we're just gonna decide to fuck with your immune system, which is also going to fuck with your body image because you're gonna lose like 50 pounds for no reason. Do I want to do eyeliner? I should do a little bit of eyeliner. I'll do this one, that's fine. I'll take a little bit of this dark purple, Implode, diffuse that liner out a little bit. There we go. There we go. But the more we learned about the disease and the more we learned about dermatomyositis, the kind of scarier it became just in hindsight, because at the time we didn't know what was going on. It was like a mystery, and I didn't get my name in a medical journal, much to my dismay. The more we learned about it, and like we just realized that like how scary it was and how close it was and how lucky I got, because if it had gone on that much longer, you know, my heart is a muscle. Like, it could have gotten to my heart. Like, my immune system could have seen my heart and been like, oh, that's infected. We need to attack it. Okay, here we go. I have, I'm gonna use the Nematang gloss because I haven't used it lately. I love this gloss. So pretty. Oh my God, I love it. Because prednisone suppressed my immune system, I had to be like extra nice to myself. I had to be like extra nice to my liver. Like I didn't drink like at all when I turned 21. Like a little bit, I had like a drink, but because I was still on a lot of these medications and I had to be like extra kind to my liver, I just like didn't do any of those things. I didn't really like rebel in college. I didn't go party. Like my first drink was like a mimosa, which wasn't even a mimosa. It was just like orange juice and sake. Don't ask me why. My first boyfriend at the time self-identified as an otaku, so we met in Japanese class. I had to be super nice to my body because my immune system was just like so suppressed. For years, I would go back to the doctor, and I still have a rheumatologist that I go see every year. And I probably should make my appointment. I'm a little past my appointment, but like all the numbers that I've had in the last few years have been really good. And at this point, I am off all my meds. I am off all my medications because I was at that like cusp age where I was just young enough for it to still be some form of juvenile dermatomyositis. I thank my lucky stars every day that that's when I got it, because if I had gotten this as an adult where I did not have my parents' insurance, I literally don't know what I would have done, because I was on my parents' insurance until I was 26, and my dad worked for Boeing. He worked for Boeing and he retired like 5 years ago after working there for 40 years. So we had really good insurance, and I'm so thankful like every day for how fortunate I was. I was still really young and still like not really able to process how close things were and how scary it was. And I remember why I love Typhoon's White Lighter whenever I mention that record That came out in 2011, and I fell in love with it instantly, but that record, Kyle Morton, the lead singer-songwriter of Typhoon, wrote it thinking it was going to be the last thing he ever wrote because he contracted Lyme disease as a kid and he was very sick. And so that whole record was very much like this is my ending. This is the last thing I will ever do. And it turned out it wasn't. Like, he's still alive and kicking, and they've put out 2 more records since then. Like, I didn't quite listen to the lyrics very closely when I first heard the album, but then when I found out about that, like, backstory, and I went back and I listened to the lyrics, I had like this epiphany, just this like life-affirming epiphany about like, oh my God, like I got a chance and I need to really cherish it because like, and like that record did that for me, like no mistake, like that album changed my life. That's why I want to get a tattoo of the moth that's on it, because it means that much to me. And that's why I still have the band t-shirt with that record cover on it, even though it's like super fucking old and like it's not a white shirt anymore. Yeah, that's the story of how I got sick. Well, not how I got sick, but how we found out what my sickness was and what the experience was. And I never got my name in a medical journal. God, didn't get like the full Grey's Anatomy experience, unfortunately. I've had a couple people in comments mention before that they also have dermatomyositis, which is always a mindfuck because like when I got diagnosed, it was like so rare. Like I had never heard of it and my doctors hadn't really ever diagnosed it. And I very distinctly remember the resident that came by with their interns. The resident came by and was like giving kind of the rundown of what I was doing. And they're like, make note of this in your guys' notes, because you will never see this again. Now, it's been 14 years since that happened, because it was, almost 15 years now, because it was the end of 2006. I wanted to tell it again, because I've told it in some way a couple of times here over the last 10 years I've been making videos. Like once like 5 years ago, and then once like back in 2012, I think I mentioned it. I wanted to do an updated one since there's a lot of new people here who don't know this story and who don't know my story, my autoimmune story. It's not that common. Like, it's still not that common, but I think more people and more doctors are learning about these things, and more specialists are becoming more educated on more rare disorders. Something like celiac disease, none of my sister's doctors diagnosed her with that until she was 18 or 19, I don't remember exactly, but my sister's had her own fair share of health issues. She had celiac and then she had thyroid cancer. She's fine though. Autoimmune runs in our family. More people have autoimmune disorders than I think a lot of people let on, because a lot of them are invisible. Like autoimmune disorders, a lot of them are kind of invisible disorders and things that you don't see. And I don't have to live, it's not something that I live with, like chronic issues today. Like I said, I'm off all my meds and I've kind of outgrown it, but a lot of people don't have that luxury, and a lot of people have things that they live with every day that make their quality of life bad throughout their life. It's not something that they grow out. It's something that they have for the rest of their life. For everybody out there who has something like that, I hope you are okay. I hope you are doing well. I wish you all the best, and I hope this was maybe a little bit relatable or helpful to anybody. So yeah, that's the end of the story. For today's song of the day, if I had recorded this yesterday, I would have made it another Black Clover OP, because update, Josh and I have watched through episode 122.
Who am I?
But that is not the song of the day. Song of the day is Contact High from We Are Scientists. We Are Scientists, my favorite band in the entire fucking world, put out a new song today, a new single. I wore this t-shirt because I got to go meet up with a friend of mine that I have known for 13 years, that we met on the We Are Scientists message boards when I was a freshman in college, and she came here to visit, and I got to meet her for the first time, and it was super fucking cool. But yeah, We Are Scientists Contact High is your song of the day, because I love them. Yeah, so check out the song, give them some love. I love them so much. I love them more than any other band. I love them so much. Here's the look. I didn't talk much about the look, but it's, yeah, using this palette. It's a nice palette.
I like it.
But if you would like to see more of me, please subscribe and hit the bell notification to get notified when I upload new videos. And as well, check out my other social medias, my Instagram, my Twitter, and my Twitch, which I stream Sims stuff on. But I hope you are well. I hope you are safe, healthy, happy, comfortable. The weather's gotten a lot better, so hope it's also good where you are, because it's not 100 degrees like it was 3 days ago. But thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!